We have Vince Bradley, CEO of Abundant IoT, and they are an energy-focused IoT company providing a range of services. It would do a serious injustice to put them into any one particular bucket. With that note, I did meet Vince at a event that they hosted out in the Chelsea Piers, New York City. We had a full educational event there, and I picked up on some very unique solutions that they provide, more towards the upper market, but they do serve across all verticals. So I wanted to give Vince the opportunity to just give himself an introduction as well as an overview on Abundant IoT before we jump into any specifics.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for having me on today and really appreciate the time. So it's exciting to talk about eIOT, which is IoT focused on energy. And, again, sometimes we unpack the IoT data and how it relates to energy. But, what we're essentially doing is we're connecting the energy services to the technology channel using sensors and SIMs and physical security like cameras. So this is something that's been kind of a hole in the markets out there where customers didn't have the ability to connect the IoT services with the energy services. Today, all of the energy services have sensors. So it's a much easier motion today to connect the IoT with the energy.
I'm looking at actually on my other screen here, you have kind of your quintessential graphic, which is that the product ecosystem, which contains a huge swath of different IoT solutions for facilities. I know you work with across all organizations, but what is a sort of quintessential vertical or use case that you see most often that you play extremely well in?
So, again, I think with verticals, typically we've got plays both in the mid-market and enterprise space is really the fit for what we do. However, when we talk about verticals specifically, hospitality is an absolutely huge space for us. And this is largely because of post-pandemic activity related to that industry kind of coming back and getting a lot more traction. So that's a big one. Healthcare is also a very big vertical for us as well. Commercial real estate is another one, helping out with buildings, helping to achieve NOI, the net operating income, helping to increase NOI in buildings, something that we're very good at doing as well. Those are probably the top three. As it relates to IoT, however, manufacturing is also very big. So there's a few for you, Daniel.
Right. And the ways that you can help them increase that net income are through the use of IoT to track and report on data coming out from the field and things like water sensors, air filtration, electricity, and gas. And I think there's one in particular that I thought was super interesting, which was the harmonic filters. Where do you usually start with a client when you're getting into an opportunity? Obviously, usually it's about something, right? You're coming in, there's a need, is brought by a partner, or you're sourcing it yourself or through one of your direct reps. If you were walking into a client today that was fitting into one of those verticals, where do you start with them? What's the question that you ask?
So yeah, a great question. And so it really depends on what the client's needs are. So we like to start the journey with a simple question. What are the pain points in your facility? So because we find that asking that question helps us to decide which lane we're going to be in, right? We're going to talk digital transformation by IoT, or are we going to talk savings? Or are we going to talk sustainability as it relates to energy? Or are we going to talk about both of those things at the same time? So that's typically our number one question that we will ask customers. Another one on the IoT front would be, and this is my favorite question as it relates to IoT, if the devices could talk, what would they say? This is a fascinating question. What we like about it is that it also is more fun because the answers you can get from that question, you can imagine they get very creative. We enjoy that one. And so as it relates to IoT, we focus on those questions. If we're looking more at the energy space, typically the question we will ask would be, what are your corporate sustainability goals? So we will often look at the webpage to understand what the ESG targets are. Do they have a materiality matrix? Do they have a mission statement for ESG? Things like that. So we try to understand, and we look for the CSR, the Corporate Sustainability Report. And we also look to speak with the new CSO. I like to call that title the newest CSO, the corporate sustainability officer and asking them questions in regards to those same things.
I actually have a sustainability background. I landed in tech as the result of a series of events I won't get into, but I did go to college at Stony Brook University for sustainability studies, and I graduated with honors there as well as a degree in business from another school. So I am very familiar, and it's one of those things when you're talking about it, and sustainability it's a very vast concept, right? You're looking at energy usage, you're looking at land usage, you're looking at consumption, you're also looking at policies, you're looking at the community involvement. There's many different facets to sustainability. It's not just, hey, are we, aiming for carbon neutrality? It's your water consumption, it's your electricity consumption, it's what you're doing with your waste. So let's try to tackle those one by one if we can, because I know you do address many of those aspects. So maybe start with water, right? I know you have a lot of solutions focused on water usage and the ability to track those sort of things. So can you talk about how Abundant IoT might be able to solve some of the pain problems which are in your wheelhouse in terms of water consumption and usage?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. And I think water is an incredibly hot topic. I was just reading yesterday that the city of San Francisco will be increasing their rates by 28% over the next couple of years, just as it relates, just something that came out of the press yesterday. But as it relates to water, there's a couple of things we can do that are very significant. My favorite one is the ability to provide world-class leak detection for buildings. And so we actually have a system that allows for leak detection to be proactive, to actually be able to tell when a leak is coming before a pipe bursts. And the way this is done is by using the standard deviation of vibration and turbulence in those pipes. And then once, you see it going significantly above that number, you get notified with IoT that, you get notified, hey, something's coming up here. We love the proactive system. We're distributed for the only patented system in the world. And what's nice about it is the ability to, again, proactively look at those leaks. What I also like about that solution is the ability to auto shut off is kind of table stakes with leak detection, but the system is integrated. In other words, you don't have to get sensors from one source and the actual other equipment from another source. It's all one solution that works really intelligently. It also uses radio instead of Wi-Fi, which is incredibly important. We all know Wi-Fi can fail and often does. Radio is much more reliable. So having, a patented proactive leak detection system that is helping you to find the problem before it happens. And the number one leak in a building for insurance purposes is leaks. So we're definitely addressing a huge part of the space as it relates. And I also like that product as we talk about eIOT, because even though water is not technically energy, I like to talk about how we manage it as energy, and then also how we bring the IoT in to help. So combining the energy with the IoT in a classic form with that eIOT. So that's one solution in the water that we have. Another one that is also very popular is valve technology. And so we've got some energy efficiency technology that allows for cavitation to be addressed. And cavitation is a big problem as it relates to water and the management of it. And so what we're essentially able to do is create a laminar flow with our valve technology. And that laminar flow actually can save 30 to 40% off the use of the water itself. So we're actually able to impact a reduction of about a third of the use of the water itself. In other words, it literally uses 1/3 less water, addressing that cavitation and that turbulence, creating a laminar flow. And this device is placed behind the meter, but before the backflow device. So it's a great solution to help customers use less water and be much more efficient. I should also say, related, people probably are aware of the peak demand charges in electricity. Well, the same thing is true with water bills. You look at your water bill, you'll notice you have a bucket of your allotted usage that you can take. When you go over that, the price goes way up as you go over that number. They call it peak demand in electricity. In water, it's a very similar thing. The point I'm making is that by reducing the use of the water by a third, chances of going into that, extra utilization could go way down. And so the cost savings can actually be more than the 30 to 40% that I mentioned. So significant savings, great efficiency, great sustainability with the water solutions.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. And it's pretty incredible thinking about that. Just basically bubbles and turbulence can cause such an expense and wreak havoc on your environmental toll that your organization is going through. What else can we talk about in terms of the electricity usage and gas? And I know you mentioned that harmonics, which I thought was really interesting and something that is pretty detectable based off of what you had told me, just kind of taking a look around and seeing, you see flickering lights, right? Like, what does that mean? And people might think that this is really not a big deal or it's just the way it is. But you're telling me that there's really a big problem behind that people don't realize.
Well, there's a huge problem, but just kind of high level to mention it, we do have a portal for the electricity and gas. We're able to help customers to manage it way better. They can find out what their pricing is like in the middle of the month. They can see what their budget is middle of the month to see how much their spend is going to be. So we have some great SaaS, the software that's able to manage the spend on the high level. But as it relates to what you were saying with harmonics, harmonics are otherwise known as bad or dirty power. Those are some of the slang terms that people have used to explain harmonics in the past. But what we're essentially talking about here is, and this is something really electrical engineers know more about, not so much electricians. And the way it works is you've got, all of this AC power, right? So 50 years ago, it was all AC power. And then you had things like the microwave oven come in with DC power. But what essentially happened there is a nonlinear load, because when you convert that DC to AC to DC, right, that's when the harmonics are created. It's a thing called THD, total harmonic distortion. That's what we measure as we look at harmonics. So what happens is essentially lost energy, right? Heat. Like when a cell phone gets hot, we can all relate to that. You're charging your cell phone and it gets hot and you're wondering why. It's harmonics. And actually when that happens, we can definitely help the customer to save a double-digit percentage off their bill, to protect their equipment from damaging harmonics, so to help them with corporate sustainability. So there's a lot of things we can do there. But again, essentially it's that AC to DC conversion that happens. And it's heat and it's also noise. So that buzzing LED when you're walking down a hallway in a hotel room, you have a buzzing LED light above you, those kinds of things. As you mentioned, though, a flickering light is definitely a bad sign. That's a sign of serious harmonics. That's probably where we're talking, probably saving that customer closer to 20% off their bill because of the amount of DC that they have connected in the building. So it's also important to note that when you put in solar, LED lighting, these are obviously very, renewable, sustainable sources of energy and ways to manage it. But they also have DC power. So we'll bring in this harmonic filter along with those technologies to help address the harmonics that they can create. To be very clear, though, solar and LED lighting are doing a lot more good than, so I guess what I'm saying is that, don't hold back from those technologies because of the harmonics. Just bring the harmonic filter in with it.
Of course.
If you can't, it's still way better than not doing it at all. So essentially what this is a device. It's a device that has no power, by the way. So the device actually goes on the power panel itself on the neutral bus bar. So it can be installed. Actually, the customer does not have to take their power down to install this device, which is great. So essentially what it does is it gets installed on each panel for the customer. It's a very simple installation. And once it's installed, it's taking that damaging harmonic energy that's coming in, it's neutralizing it right away.
Right. So what you're saying is it's not only, an older building that has that could have an issue, right? It's not just like, oh, this is an old infrastructure and, it's not efficient and it was, needs to be replaced or something like that. It's actually, it could be newer technologies that have been implemented that can have, if I'm understanding correctly, if not the same or even greater inefficiency in the way it's used because of that conversion in terms of the physics from the AC to the DC as it progressed through time. Do I have that right?
Correct. Thank you for mentioning that, because that is exactly one of the reasons why it is such a hot device. No pun intended. It is actually, something that we can't keep on the shelves because of what you just mentioned. Because even in smart buildings, in fact, in smart buildings, the harmonics can be worse sometimes. So it is definitely a huge problem that is not addressed in over 90% of smart buildings. So I guess what I'm saying there, if you do the math, is that, there is a small percentage of smart buildings that come with harmonic devices. Very few, though. It's a very new thing. The vast majority of 99% of existing buildings out there have problems with harmonics.
Would I be correct in saying that potentially the more complex and advanced your digital infrastructure within a building, the greater the chance is for the harmonics? There's a direct relationship with the more electronics that you have and the more devices that you have, you're actually increasing, we'll call, your vulnerability to harmonics.
Correct. Here's an example for you. LED lighting, right? Hot topic, very hot topic 15 years ago, still warm 5 years ago. Well, now, you don't hear about it as much, right? And the reason for that is everyone has retrofitted or brought in that technology. It's sort of died out over time because of the implementation of the technology. But you don't have that with harmonics because harmonics is not well known. And so because of that, it has not been addressed on a big scale at all. It's actually a very misunderstood thing, very unknown thing. So you're absolutely correct. It could be a bigger thing in smart buildings. It's a big, big issue.
So the message here is, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We're not telling you not to implement these sustainable lighting sources like LEDs and solar technology. It is maybe if you have done so, you might be worth a look to take a look at what Abundant IoT can do in terms of harmonics to kind of even further your goals in terms of energy usage. So that's very interesting. And I think it's kind of like, it's an angle that lots of organizations probably are missing, even though they think and they are doing something that's really great. And you can see it in the numbers. And I'm actually looking through ESG ratings for a prospect right now. And they have one of the most incredibly applaudable approaches. I mean, they are reducing by 30 to 45% across the board on energy and water and like year over year. And they're crushing their benchmark numbers, and they have very ambitious climate goals as well. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, these guys are doing incredible work, but what happens if there's another 5% in there or another 10% in there that could be achieved by taking a look at harmonics to supplement what they've already done as a way of getting in there and helping them out with something they may not be aware of?
Absolutely. In fact, I can't mention names, but I can tell you that we're working with several large enterprise organizations as well as many mid-market customers. With some of the bigger ones, they have these corporate sustainability goals. We're going to reduce 4%, right, globally across all of our organizations. And we came into several of these organizations after they were done with the analysis and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We've got a plan. We've got initiatives for all of these products. Here's our initiatives. Here's how much we want to, change and impact everything else. And we came in after all of this. And they said, we're already done with that. And we said, well, have you addressed harmonics? And they said, we don't play music. And we're like, no, all joking aside, have you heard about harmonics? Okay, no, we have not. And so literally there are several huge organizations that were done with their, analysis and what they're going to do. And we came in and we were able to tremendous impact those organizations because of unknown harmonics, right? So yes, amazing opportunity for organizations to do more and create more impact to their organization.
And this is a solution that you can implement that works with the work they've already done. So this isn't a rip out and replace what you've achieved, and we need to come in and replace all these devices and all these boxes and all this other stuff. You're just getting in there and adding in just another device, which you mentioned doesn't even require or take in any other electricity. It's just something that's supplemental with what they work with. So on that note, I'm curious if an organization had a monitoring portal that monitored energy usage and things like that across all their locations, are you able to play nice with their portals and give them access, or how does that work in a situation that you would encounter there?
Great question. So one example that I'd like to give on that, which is I think important, is we have a product called LongFi, and this is basically a product that it's an IoT product, and there are these gateways that you can get on the 915. So with these gateways, as an example, let's just take a 100,000 square foot warehouse for a moment. In that warehouse, 10% of that warehouse is high-speed data for video and things like that, right? But the rest of it is all these devices that are either on, off, open, close, like IoT devices that are telling us things, giving us information. So it would take 62 access points to cover a 100,000 square foot warehouse. And these access points are power hungry, and they're for Wi-Fi. Let's just be clear, right? They're addressing the 10% of that facility, not the 90. So, people using access points just because it's what they used to do to help with the warehouse. We have a better way. We can put in 4 of these LongFi gateways, cover the entire warehouse for a fraction of the cost, way more sustainable. So that's one example. But the reason I bring this example up and bring it back to your question is that with the LongFi solution, it's on the 915 spectrum. It's different. It would be a different portal to manage it. To be very clear and answer your question, if someone's got a LoRaWAN, which stands for low power and low bandwidth, long distances, right? So think of, like Wi-Fi and LongFi. So think LongFi is like for longer distances, like up to 70 miles away, you can send this data. So if someone has LoRaWAN technology through AT&T, Mobile, or Verizon, you can't just come in and add into that same network, to answer your question. So with the LongFi solution, we can't just add sensors into the existing LoRaWAN. We would need to create another network. But a lot of people are doing that anyway. A lot of people are like, okay, this LoRaWAN network's over here. And frankly, the hackers are going after those networks because that's what everyone has, right? Everyone's using that technology. LongFi's over here. It's on blockchain. So I challenge you to try to hack that. Good luck with that. But anyway, my point being is that because of the fact that it's on blockchain and it's a separate network, people actually like it because it's protecting their IoT network. As it relates to everything else we do, it depends. It depends on the product. It depends on what the manufacturer of the devices are and things like that. I would say about 60 to 70% of the time we can tap into an existing network. A good example of that would be Verkana. Client had a few Verkana cameras that they had started off their physical security journey with. Just for everyone listening, physical security is a great example of here's a product, right, that is actually using bandwidth from core networks, not IoT. But it's an IoT device, right? Because you're connecting it in with all your stuff, so you know what's going on. But it's a great example of where, someone's got some cameras already, Verkana cameras, we can come in and add to that network. So physical security is a little bit easier for us to add onto the network. IoT can be tougher, to your question.
Yeah. It's the old, it depends question. It's the engineer's response. And I asked that question for selfish reasons because of an intel into that I do know who they are using for their monitoring cross platforms. So it is an important question to ask, though, because it might be the first objection. It could be, hey, well, we're monitoring everything across here and, we don't want another application. But you know what? What if that helps you achieve your goals, faster than you need to? Or what if the make or break is you're not going to get that extra percentage points that you need in order to meet your goals? What does that mean to you? Or, we'll figure it out, right? But before I start rambling yet again, there's another big area that I want to talk to. And I know you have various different ways that you can approach this technology, and that is solar. So I know you have something you talk about called community solar. You also have floating solar. So I'm going to let you jump into that, whatever way you think is easiest to digest for the folks at home.
Sure, absolutely. So, solar is so exciting right now. There's been so many advances. And a lot of people, when they think solar, they think big, heavy panels, technology that's going to be obsolete in 5 years. And can I get the ROI on my investment and all these kinds of things? But it's come so far. To your point, floating solar is an amazing technology. And it's nice because if you don't have roof rights and you don't have land, right, then you still got the potential to tap water. And it could be a desalination plant. It could be a municipality's water plant. It could be wastewater. It could be anything, any body of water, ponds, things like that are not being used. What's nice about it, and there actually have been a lot of studies done on this. And at first, people were like, hey, that's got to be bad for the water. What's the damage? What's the impact? The studies actually came back and we loved the results because it does two really important things for the water. Number one, it actually reduces the evaporation of the water. Floating solar helps the water to not evaporate, which is hugely important. Algae blooms are another thing. It is a tremendous reduction in algae blooms. It's an incredibly important part to the ecosystem that we're talking about. So it does both those things. Especially the Southeast is very popular with floating solar. Our SVP of sales actually is doing a ribbon cutting on Monday for the first one that was done in Ohio that he was involved with. So we've got a lot of experience with this technology and it's really fascinating. It's incredible what we can do with it. So that's a little bit on floating. On flexible solar, we also love this product because think about it this way, all roofs are not created equal, right? I mean, look at some of the tin roofs out there. Look at the non-load bearing roofs out there. There's a lot of them. And so that's been a big problem. We've seen these solar blankets and different things like that, in different areas. But again, that's kind of a micro, 100-watt solution, that kind of thing. We're looking for commercial grade solutions. What do we do? And so flexible solar is something that's developed over the past few years. A year ago, it was maybe half as effective as rooftop solar. Now it's up to over 75%. The efficacy of the technology and the ability to have production and generation from the solar is now rivaling rooftop solar, which is fascinating. It's very light and it's a different type of construction. It can be put on pretty much any roof. And so the technology has really advanced and it's created a situation where we can, put solar anywhere. It's really the takeaway from flexible solar. The third that you mentioned, community solar, this space is really taking off right now. As you drive around and you see these solar farms all over the place, you see these, massive amounts of solar panels on the side of the road. What is that? Chances are there's a decent chance that's community solar. What that essentially is an agreement between a developer and the utility. So whatever your local utility is, creating an agreement with a developer that's fairly local. And what they do is they put this community solar farm together and they create incentives. And so the utility says, okay, we're going to give 5, 10, and up to 20% off on your utility bill by simply signing up for community solar. And I have to say, Daniel, I'm so excited about this one because we talked about it in the channel as like, it's kind of the easiest product to bring to your customers. And the reason why is because there's no teeth, there's no minimums. You're basically signing up saying, I'll be with you for a year or whatever, and you don't have to do anything. So there's no minimums, no teeth in the agreement. Even if you were to sell your company, it goes with it. If you were to move, there's ways of dealing with that. It's an amazing product. And it is a no panel solution because again, you're just tapping that local community solar farm. So this is a great solution for people that don't have roof rights and don't have land, as I mentioned, with the floating. It's very good for metro areas, especially. So, obviously lots of high rises and that kind of thing. There's not much room and roof rights are very tough in the metros. So so solar's come a long way. And when you combine solar with a battery, so the solar and the battery backup combined create a microgrid, small grid off the grid, right? You're creating your own grid, essentially, is what you're doing. My favorite thing about that, for those that are in connectivity, maybe considering adding energy or IoT, that kind of thing, the microgrids are a great way to get in. because they actually help you do what you're already doing. If you're in telecom cloud, you're looking at BCDR, business continuity, disaster recovery. A microgrid is the best way. To be clear, at corporate, we have a microgrid, and there have been 8 power outages in the past 3 years at corporate. Corporate has not been down once in their power. That's a great example of the redundancy and making sure that your power stays up and running and using renewable sources to do so. So, again, the solar's charging during the day, charging that battery so that if there was a power outage, then it would have the battery stored in it for those power outages. So solar's come a long way. Glad you asked.
Yeah, and that's really interesting also from the sustainability aspect, because I think something gets very confused when you talk about sustainability. Everyone always goes in their mind to environmental, and that's not quite the same thing, although it is obviously environmentally geared. What sustainability means is the cross-section, the overlap between what is socially equitable, economically viable, and environmentally sound. If it's not checking all 3 of those boxes, it's not sustainable, because you can preserve every piece of land and do nothing to it. But if you're not supporting the communities around it, it's not sustainable. It's environmental. So there is a difference. And the reason why I'm making that distinction and bringing it up is because a lot of organizations have community goals as well as part of their sustainability initiatives that do proper urban development and to support the communities around them, because you're putting in these high-rise buildings or something like that, you are impacting the area that you're in, and your footprint being in that community, like metro areas, perhaps, or even just, urban sprawl, expanding your metro area and going into suburban areas, you are encroaching upon communities, and these corporations have responsibility goals to support their local communities as well. And I'm mentioning that because if you have local communities or nearby local communities that have solar farms, you can be supporting your community by tapping into their, we'll call it their power grids, right? You can be helping them out because perhaps they have, now I'm making the puns, but an abundance of energy that they're not utilizing, and they can be helped by tapping into community solar.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes even further though, Daniel. What I love about it, like just kind of like one more thing on community solar, we love that we're able to also bring it to mid-market and enterprise customers, and they can offer it, not always, but usually they can offer it as an incentive to their employees as well. So it's a really nice perk for the employees as well as the company themselves to, even go further with that whole effort, right? So I just want to mention that as it relates. I love that aspect of it. If you'd like, I can tell you a little bit more about ESG as it relates. Community solar it can have a direct impact on ESG because you can tap RECs if you're tapping a smaller discount. I mentioned the range of 5 to 20%. And so if a customer says, hey, look, I would like to, give back, right? So I'm going to tap this 5% program. I'm going to save 5% off my bill, but I'm also going to get a REC, a renewable energy credit, which is an incredibly important thing as it relates also to that ESG journey and to just in general to the sustainability journeys at, in the commercial levels. If you're getting a smaller discount, you can impact RECs with that. Energy efficiency, like we mentioned that water efficiency technology we talked about, that definitely can help with the ESG. Another one that can really help with it is, on-site generation, the ability to tap into like the linear generators that are now out there. And we're a distributor for those as well. So exciting because they're near zero non-combustible units that can run off of biogas. They can run off of hydrogen and even ammonia. So natural gas and propane also can be used. Again, they're not green, but they're closer to green than some of the things that are out there. Point being, customer could use natural gas now on the journey to using hydrogen, for example.
It's important.
We know hydrogen is more expensive. Biogas can be a little bit challenging to get going with. You have to condition one of these generators before you can use biogas in it. The point, though, is the journey has started with a lot of this on-site stuff that's out there. The flexible panels I mentioned can also help because there's so much more out there, right, that you can tap into. So solar windows is another one. A lot of people don't even know about this technology, and I didn't even mention it before. It's a very important thing, and it does definitely help the ESG. it impacts the ESG. And there's just probably a couple more I can mention really quickly, and then we can unpack them. Mention RECs, right? That's a really important part of it. And then I think there's, I think UVGI fixtures, right? Look at UV light, and that can really help also on the social side. As we all know, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, we talk a lot about the environmental part, and I think Abundant IoT impact that the most. But in the case of the UVGI, it's a really good example of where it also impacts the social aspect as well, right? The health factor that's going on there. It's a huge part of it. So anyway, I just want to give you a couple examples as it relates.
It's very interesting to me. I mean, you cover from a lot of angles and you do a great job of explaining it. And as you just mentioned that last one there, I'm recalling the event, which was, I think it was almost a month ago at this point, or maybe even longer. But you mentioned something else that was involved in HVAC. It was UVC sanitation in the HVACs. That was another form of sterilization.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked about it. It's another product, Daniel. It was hot off the press when we talked, and that was like 6 weeks ago or something like that. We have an injector product. We can basically inject a cleaning mechanism for HVAC, which basically cleans all the grime out of the HVAC facilities. So what it essentially does is remove all that, and it creates a much better flow. The immediate impact is a double-digit savings on the electric bill. Because as we all know, HVAC is a huge use of energy. And so if you clean out the HVAC systems with the injector, you get a much smoother flow going through them, right? It's just, you don't have any issues. Also, it's much healthier. Obviously, the grime that exists in HVAC systems, unfortunately, HVAC systems are not as clean as they need to be. And a lot of customers don't regularly clean them, right? And it's just a problem. Some companies do, a lot of them don't. So the injector is nice because you can go into a building that may have been purchased or something like that. It's a very common motion. A building is sold. It's a legacy building. Someone comes in and does a retrofit, but they don't clean out the HVAC. They just use the existing system. Maybe they retrofit some of it. They're not cleaning it all out, right? Well, then they're not performing. They're not seeing the same performance out of the system. So the injector product is an incredible way to address that and have a great impact as well.
I love it. I love how many angles that you're able to come in and help. I think, I'm going to revise the questions that we developed in the beginning. It would be, what are you doing today to achieve your ESG goals? What do you wish you could be doing? And that's that magic wand question you're asking, right? What if it could track anything, what would it say? If it could speak any language, or what was that line you used?
It was, if the devices could talk, what would they say? And,
right.
Like the HVAC is like, I need an injection. So there you go, right? We've kind of solved for that. So, we have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's the amount of angles that you can take, and the fact that you have the experience and the know-how, and you've done these implementations. And I know you can't name any names, but I do know that you work with major, massive enterprises all across the United States and big Fortune 100 companies and 500 companies. So these are not, new, they're new technologies, but they're not, you guys are not new at it. I think you're kind of modest in the way that you're presenting it, because you have a way of describing complex things in a very paced and clear tone, but there's a serious level of excitement behind it in my eyes while I'm listening to it, because I know some of the logos that are behind these technologies and how impactful they are. And this is why in my prospecting, and I'm reaching out to certain organizations that I know they can benefit with them and compete with those larger organizations in the enterprise space if they're in mid-market, and so on and so forth. So
yeah, it's a great solution. And I think, one other really hot topic just to mention as well, just in post-election, the Inflation Reduction Act, right? So as we know, a lot of this will be dismantled next year. It's been socialized. It's been publicized, everything else. So with that, we've got things like the ITC credit, which is a 30% credit on solar. And, that was actually scheduled to go through 2032. We don't think it's going to get there. We've already heard that this could be going away. Very, very good time right now to be tapping into the billions of dollars of incentives that exist out there That one in particular. There's one other one I want to mention for the audience. And that's the 179D credit. And that credit was actually only $1.80 per square foot 3 years ago, or actually 2 years ago. It's actually $5 per square foot right now. So the ability to get that kind of a credit, $5 per square foot, is a lot. And so with property owners, people that own buildings, with REITs, real estate investment trusts, data centers often are in REIT buildings. All of these people, and by the way, this credit wasn't even available to REITs 2 years ago. So talk to a lot of REITs that don't even know about it. And so I think one message I would put out there would be, it's a great time to look at this stuff because it might be gone. And so whether it's solar, the 30% ITC credit, or it's the $5 per square foot from the 179D credit, energy efficiency mainly, that would be for LED and HVAC would be good examples for 179D credit. So if someone did LED 15 years ago, as I mentioned earlier, they can actually do a retrofit now. The technology has come so far in 15 years. If it was 5 years ago, probably not. The technology was pretty good 5 years ago. 10 years ago was kind of like, not sure. Depends on the customer and what they did.
I'm laughing because I have here my brand new Phoenix camping lantern with I forgot the type of LED that's in here, but it's incredible. It's 2,000 lumens that'll run for 9 hours, and that's not something that could ever be done just a short time ago. So if I'm getting this on a consumer flashlight, essentially a camping lantern, then I can only imagine what's available at an industrial level, and the differences of what they must have today if it was 15 years ago versus what it is today.
Well, it's incredible with halogen and magnetic induction lighting, some of these different technologies and where they're at. It's anyone that hasn't updated, they definitely need to. And it's a great time to do it, I guess is my message. I mean, if you haven't done your LEDs, now is the time, because you get a huge time to do it. And if you did them a long time ago, over 10 years ago, you might want to take another look at them. Once again, that you some incentives to do it.
Well, I know I promised you a 45-minute time limit, and we've already gone over by 5 minutes, so I apologize for that, but it's been a great conversation. I want to give you the opportunity to throw out a call to action. What are the steps to take for our channel partners out there if they run into an opportunity they feel fits into one of the buckets that we've described here today? What's the call to action to them?
Well, I think, really the biggest CTA we have would be to get the electric bill, the simple motion of getting the electric bill, because we can learn so much from a customer with that bill. I mentioned some of the things, but, potential organic savings from looking at hedging their existing power source that they're tapping. We can also give them green solutions as well. If they, it can cost a little bit more money, but again, that's also helping your ESG, right? So very popular today is to tap into green solutions, as both electric and gas solutions. So that's one. So get the electric bill is probably the number one CTA. Another one, though, that I kind of alluded to was to go and scrape the websites of, your customers. Go and look at their web page and look for a couple things. One is called the CSR, Corporate Sustainability Report. Enterprises typically do have this on their website, or they've got information. If you don't find anything on the CSR, you can also look for corporate sustainability. And sometimes just the word sustainability is the one you have to use. But the CTA is go to those websites, find out what they're doing, and send that information to us, and we will help you. We will show you what we can do with each of those initiatives. Typically, we're able to impact all of them because we have a very diverse product and solution set. So we can impact a lot of things within that. Those are probably the two main ones that I would recommend, depending on what lane you're in and what's needed. And then just a reminder on the IoT, just what's going on in the building. What are those pain points? So if it's an IoT conversation you're starting with, what's the pain point? Also a tip, don't try to do the whole enchilada with IoT. Start with the problem and the pain points that they have now. Solve a problem for them, and then you can look at everything else. What's important to them? Is it efficiency or is it savings? If they're saying efficiency, that's more of an IoT conversation and more of the energy efficiency conversations we had. If it's savings, then we want to look at, get that electric bill. Mm-hmm. And so think about it this way. Prices are going to be going up And we know that with AI proliferation and just the organic path of data centers and, a lot of the things going on out there, use is going to go up and up and up. What I would say as a final message would be, it's a great time to get into IoT focused on energy, because you can help your customers save a lot of money and become more efficient. And here's the best part, the retention. When you upsell energy and or eIoT to a customer, a telecom cloud customer, they don't leave, because now you're helping them with the other big utility, right? You're already doing telecom cloud. Now you're helping them with energy. That's valuable. And they really appreciate that. And they stay with us for those reasons. So,
well, I think it's a different angle that the legacy channel has probably not thought about, but definitely should be thinking about, because their mid-market and enterprise clients are thinking about it. And if they're not talking to them about it, somebody else is, or they're doing it on their own, and you're missing out on a great opportunity to help clients.
Yes, we are changing the channel, as I often say, and we're creating opportunities within the channel that didn't exist before. So we encourage anyone to reach out, and we're happy to help in any way we can. So we really appreciate the time.
Likewise, Vince, it was great having you on. Thank you very much. I look forward to getting you back on, maybe on one of the latest developments. Don't shy away when the new technology comes out, because I know you're the type of man that is the Wayne Gretzky quote, right? Skate to where the puck is going to be rather than where it is today. I think that's the mindset that you live by.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe next time it's procurement management, because, we have sustainable shipping and the IT services options and different products there. So that's a whole nother podcast right there.
We'd love to. But for now, thank you very much, Vince.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Thanks, everyone.